Hello again. I am Lani Anpo. I am Lakota, Hidatsa, Mandan, and Arikara and Jewish. I am the daughter and granddaughter of Indian boarding school survivors and the descendant of Jewish refugees who survived Russian pogroms. I am a product of colonial and supremacy violence, but more importantly, I am the resilience of two indigenous peoples from opposite sides of the globe whose destinies collided on Turtle Island, or what many of you lovingly call America. In my work as an Indigenous advocate, I witnessed the exclusion of Jewish voices and the distortion of Jewish history, leading to the denial of Jewish people's rightful place among Indigenous nations. This erasure fuels narratives that falsely portray Israel as a colonial state and Zionists, aka Jews, as illegal settlers in our own indigenous homeland, when in reality, Zionism and the reestablishment of Israel were among the first actualizations of land back, an indigenous movement reclaiming homeland, sovereignty, and culture. On October 7th, Palestinian militias invaded the sovereign indigenous nation of Israel, committing the deadliest terrorist attack per capita in human history. More than 1,300 Israelis were barbarically slaughtered. Hundreds were kidnapped, 101 of which are still being held captive by Hamas. And mass rape was weaponized indiscriminately against Israeli civilians. Actions many falsely labeled as Palestinian liberation and even indigenous resistance. Let me be clear, there is no context where rape is resistance, and it certainly is not indigenous resistance. Militarized mass rape is a war crime, and it is a tool specifically used in genocidal conquest. We must acknowledge that October 7th was a publicly staged modern Islamic conquest carried out by Hamas, orchestrated and funded by the Islamic Republic and Iran for the sole purpose of humiliating and dominating the Israel nation and destroying the lifeline of the Jewish people. Today, despite the brutality of this attack and the narrative of Israel being a colonial state being based in historical revisionism and disinformation, this targeted campaign is largely facilitated by universities and global media, contributing to widespread indoctrination and radicalization. The validation of this agenda and the lack of condemnation for the October 7th attack by world leaders and organizations has sparked an extreme rise in anti-Semitic violence across the globe, echoing the early stages of the Holocaust. The rippling impact of this agenda also sets a dangerous precedent, jeopardizing the rights of indigenous people globally. Solidarity to protect our Jewish and Israeli relatives, indigenous rights, and humanity is more critical now than ever. We should be able to recognize the impacts of war on Palestinian children and civilians without distorting reality or scapegoating Jews for the actions and consequences of Palestinian militants. Beneath the trauma and the imposed radical ideologies creating division, we are relatives. Our connection as deeply intertwined as the roots of olive trees. Together, we have the responsibility and the power to heal our communities in honor of our lost loved ones, our future generations, and the lands that sustain us. Let us choose to rise to the occasion.